You're on Team Human, conscious intervention in the machine, an opportunity to pull our heads out of the media haze for long enough to let our hearts remind us of the opportunities of this lifetime. We were put on heaven, but man, what are we going to choose to do with that? I'm Douglas Rushkoff, and I'm on Team Human. So I figure it's time we take account of what's going on here. Everyone has different words for it. Last month, I called it the fascist atmosphere and described it as an almost digital sensibility of yes, no's, and binary notches that don't allow for all of the in-betweenness where life really takes place. Our civilization recognizes the ticks of the clock, but not the duration between those ticks, the actual time where experience happens. But I think it's important I explain for Team Human what I see as the motivations driving some of the people, yes, human beings for now, who are responsible for engineering what feels like an intentional collapse of our government and society. So I wrote about this phenomenon in my 2022 book, Survival of the Richest, Escape Fantasies of the Tech Billionaires. And that was based on this ridiculous encounter I had with 5 ultra-wealthy dudes who told me about the bunkers and other preparations they were making for what they called the event, the nuclear disaster, climate catastrophe, food shortage, pollution, pandemic that makes life unlivable. And what struck me at the time was that these guys were the richest, most powerful people I'd ever met, yet they felt utterly powerless to influence the future, that the best they could do was hire a few futurists like me to predict the future and then prepare to survive it. So the object of the game to them was to acquire enough money and technology to outrun the impacts of their own businesses and technologies. If they had a social media company whose net effect was to make people crazy and break democracy, then the thing to do is create a fortified island paradise that doesn't depend on a functioning democracy back at home. I just want to say you're welcome to the thousands of listeners who phoned, emailed, or written in to express your appreciation for Kobe dryer sheets. I know they've changed your lives and you just don't know how to respond. Really, you don't need to do anything more than use them instead of those plastic, chemical-filled, evil, and demonically possessed dryer sheets of the others. Actually, they're not even demonically possessed because they're not organic vessels. Kobe dryer sheets could be possessed if they were so inclined because they are real cotton made lovingly by appropriately compensated labor and renewable energy facilities and completely biodegradable. In a sense, every dryer sheet you buy is being rescued from spiritual attack or other exploitation. You can get a 10% discount by going to KobeDryerSheets.com and using the discount code RUSH10. But my reaction was to ridicule. I wrote a black comedy. These guys seemed crazy. They were high on their own supply and using the excuse of a potential global disaster to build out their childhood fantasies of a virtual online clubhouse to which they could upload their brains and have sex with anime characters. I wrote the book so that we could laugh at this tiny cohort of Ayn Rand skimming techno-libertarian, transhuman, proto-fascist misogynists, not take them so seriously just because they could convince Joe Rogan of something, and most of all, not follow in their footsteps when something like COVID or an economic crisis tempts us to put up the barricades and live behind an Amazon doorbell. I was trying to show the ridiculousness of attempting to go it alone and the impossibility of genuinely shielding oneself from catastrophic horror. Or in the book's opening episode, why are the Navy SEALs in your security force going to protect you once your Bitcoin is worthless? Right? It's laughable. The solution instead is to meet our neighbors, reduce our dependence on big corporations, and establish local resiliency. We all get to make it. When we survive together, we thrive together. And I still get interviewed just about that book's opening chapter. It seems so preposterous, unbelievable even, that grown-up billionaires would think this way about the world. And I get why the hook is so interesting, but I'm sorry to say the book wasn't about those 5 billionaires, but an entire world view of survival by the strongest individuals that is now dominating the leaders in the U.S. government. This is the worldview. This is the plan. This is the philosophy driving what seems like an authoritarian chaos in America. Just as the billionaires I met believed there was little they could do about an impending existential event, some fantasy of an AI-spawned zombie apocalypse, the wealthiest among us genuinely believe that the systems through which our society organizes itself are breaking down. They believe in the inevitability of climate change as much or more than the climate activists working to prevent the worst damage. But they don't even believe in the possibility of remediation. They pay for propaganda that insists that climate change is a hoax, but that's just to prevent everyone else from catching on, so the elite can make their survival plans, accumulate land, tilt the economy, secure private armies, build the walls, before the masses figure out what's going on. Just go to one of the Koch brothers' private conferences, and you'll see presentations on how rising tides and shrinking coastlines will impact the real estate market or require mass migration inland. They are more hopeless about averting an ecological breakdown than the most radical environmentalists. Or take the protesters of Occupy Wall Street. We were arguing for alternatives to exponential capitalism, ways of reining it in while developing more circular economic practices. The folks funding and steering this new far right, they don't have such faith in the economy. They see better than anyone how unbridled extractive corporatism eventually makes a vast majority of people destitute. They know the pyramid they've built is going to stop generating wealth. The only exceptions are a few AI zillionaires who believe that once human consumers no longer have any money to spend, they'll be replaced by AI consumers. Autonomous agents will be the new customers, purchasing computer cycles and data they need using crypto. First, they come for our jobs, then they take on our role as consumers. Theoretically, at least in the minds of the craziest technocrats, it works. But either way, the system collapses for the vast majority of people. Quite simply, the elite are the ones who've lost faith in the system that has served them until now. They think it's all going to crash. And more importantly, that there just won't be enough food and energy and stuff to go around. And if such a real disaster is coming, private bunkers aside, their real approach to survival in a collapsed society is to get as rich as possible while building a military force capable of controlling the hordes of us who don't have enough food or shelter or medicine. Even if that means enacting policies that hasten the collapse. That's preferable to losing control over one's monopoly on the remaining spoils. So they invest in crypto while devaluing the dollar, lower their own taxes while raising taxes on the poor through tariffs, put as many people as possible out of work by firing government employees, which leads to a cascade of failures of the businesses they patronize, cut healthcare and other programs, throwing more people into poverty. Basically, they looked at Naomi Klein's disaster capitalism, the way that businesses profit off disasters, and they realized they may as well create those disasters. So as state and local governments go bankrupt, sovereign wealth funds and other investors can buy up the ports, bridges, highways, state parks, privatizing public assets so they can own rather than share what remains. It's how Putin and his oligarch friends remade Russia after the collapse of the Soviet Union, except in this case, the collapse will be orchestrated for the purpose. And I keep wondering, wouldn't anyone prefer to be quite wealthy in a happy world than super wealthy in an awful one? If they had the choice, you could still lord over people and build libraries and walk around like gods, only your legions of workers and consumers would be happy and sing your praises. You could make parades like Macy's did. But these guys don't actually think that's possible. So any policy to bring people up from the bottom, in their eyes, only distributes and wastes the funds and assets they need to ensure their own safety. Because they're going to need whole islands, walled kingdoms, massive security forces, nuclear power plants, robot soldiers, and computing power and neural implants so they can build virtual worlds in which to live if the planet itself becomes too toxic. I mean, I doubt they have anything against creating technologies cheap enough for everyone to get their minds into the cloud too, but that's not the object of the game here. All this radical democratic socialist talk of making sure everyone gets enough food to eat or access to medical care is just unrealistic to these guys. They believe there's not enough to go around. So instead of caring for the poor, we just cut them off. Instead of providing aid to impoverished parts of the world, let them go down in famine, disease, or conflict. And treat the underprivileged in our own country the very same way, all while convincing them we're restoring our nation's purity. And if they complain or they resist, send the army into their cities to quell the unrest. Create arguments to keep women out of the military for fear that they may not follow orders with the zeal of an ICE squad. Make sure there's no black soldiers either who may be more likely to see themselves in the people they're supposed to be shooting down. That's what the new regulation requiring people to shave is all about. There's this thing called pseudofolliculitis barbae. Just Google it. You'll see. In short, you don't want women and people of color in your domestic urban assault units. And right now, such invasions are justified as sweeps of illegal immigrants or mitigation of non-existent crime waves. But as we've been told, this is also training for the urban warfare to come. They're saying that part out loud, on TV, in their Project 2025, in the book they've endorsed, Unhumans, about why it's okay to kill communists because they're not fully human. Why would they say that part out loud? Because they're selling a philosophy that only the strong and saved deserve to be among the survivors. They've leveraged the sense of social justice overreach to sell their notion of Darwinian survival as the natural order of things. The cheetah eats the gazelle, the ICE patrols round up Mexican children. They just have to keep the illusion going that joining in the might makes right revolution will benefit even the poor whites who join in the violence. Take a couple of trillion from healthcare in order to pay them $50,000 signing bonuses to conduct authorized pogroms of Hispanic neighborhoods. Keep even 30% of people believing this will work in their favor, at least long enough to suck out the remaining wealth, and then subject them to the same thing. I want you to understand why these aren't just a silly product that's like a little bit better. It's the guy, Tom, who makes these dryer sheets is thinking about the whole thing. So like the labor that makes it, how they grow the cotton, how they put this together. You know, you can have like a nice, totally organic cotton t-shirt and it says organic and wonderful, but the manufacturing of that thing uses all these chemicals and all this waste and all this crap. They make these things with that perfect little cotton, but then they have a new process to fabricate the cotton so it doesn't put all that crap. And then when you get it, you get this thing that's like not bad. You just put it in the washer and use it as a dryer sheet, and you take it, you throw it away like with your friggin' compost. It's like it biodegrades, and it's this kind of perfect cycle of life thing. And that's the difference between this and his change diapers that he's coming out with soon and all these other products, is that they're actually sort of end-to-end part of the regenerative cycle and not just, greenwashed, oh, this is good for the world.
That's beautiful.
When even a sane, compassionate person hears all this and wraps their head around the truth that our government is intentionally crashing itself because they think the world as we know it is ending, some part of us thinks, and what can I do to protect my family? Do I move to Canada? Do I try to earn a lot of money? Does the stock market go up when the dollar crashes? How much money would I need to be on the safe side of things? Is that even possible? Could I get a second passport? Find a place in a remote permaculture community? Or worse, we worry, oh, what have I published online? Will the AIs find my post from 2019 when I suggested I was anti-capitalist? That's one of the official groups now deemed a part of the radical Democrat plot to promote terror. I don't like thinking that way, and neither should you. And I know, you're waiting for the good part, right? The team human alternative. Okay, here it comes. Our job as team human is not to succumb to the zero-sum mentality of the wealthy. Instead of seeing our reality as unfixable and requiring self-interested retreat, we see the potential bounty of being in this thing together. They're the ones who've given up on prosperity. They are living the nightmare. They are the pessimistic downers who lack faith in the regenerative capacity of people, cultures, the planet, and life itself. They may be the rich, but they are not the strong. They are the weak. They're the ones who see forecasts of climate change or the collapse of capitalism under its own extractive weight and think there's no way out other than an escape hatch built for one. We're the ones who see such forecasts as challenges to rise to the occasion. How can we prevent another 2 degrees of warming? How can we restore the topsoil through crop rotation and no-till agriculture to feed the world? How do we preserve the rainforest so it can continue to deliver its bounty of as-yet undiscovered medicines? How do we increase our capacity to welcome instead of deport the millions of climate refugees to come? Instead of making zombie apocalypse movies to help us dehumanize the masses at the gates, we create stories that help people remember that the sign of an advanced civilization is how well they treat the stranger. This was God's test of Lot in the Bible, and it's the reason he and his family were spared the destruction of Sodom. They welcomed and protected the stranger. And that's how to survive in the apocalypse. Because an apocalypse really just means revelation or unveiling, not an ending. We see that this whole obsession with winning the end game is really just our fear of death. It's a fantasy, and it's what prevents us from enjoying this heaven into which we've been born and the bounty it offers us. We are in Eden, friends, and we better start acting like it. So instead of thinking tit for tat or running away or strategizing for the end, we refuse to see the world as ending. Instead of buying into their nightmare and accepting their limited vision of how things can be, embrace the stranger, share your food with them, and together build the reality we all know is possible, even probable. And rather than confronting those who hate you as their enemy, do the opposite of what they do. Don't hate them, or you become them. Instead, meet their hate with love. counter their selfishness by sharing. Instead of building walls to keep out the others, open doorways that welcome them home. We can do this, so no more doom and gloom. That's their game. I'm Douglas Rushkoff, and I'm on Team Human. And face it, you are too. I love you.